Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by the National Association of Landscape Professionals. This is the fifth webinar in our weekly series to provide updates on the rapidly evolving situation of the coronavirus. Today's webinar, Navigating the Changing Workplace, Workforce Management and Planning in Response to COVID-19, will be comprised of a panel of your peers who will share their strategies to deal with the COVID-19 environment. We will follow up each presentation with taking your questions, so please feel free to type them in while you are listening. My name is Amy Easterday, and before we get started, I would like to share a few tips. First, we encourage you to ask questions. To do this, you will see a gray bar titled Questions in your GoToWebinar control panel on your screen. Below that is a white box allowing you to enter a question for staff. We will do our best to have as many questions as possible read to each panelist. If your question is not addressed, we will forward it to the appropriate person who will get back with you. The audience will be muted for this webinar. If for some reason you are having any technical difficulties during the presentation, please know that this webinar will be recorded and posted to the coronavirus resource page on our website later today. At this time, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to each of our panelists. First off, Andrew Bray, NALP VP of Government Relations, will unfortunately not be able to join us today. However, if you do have any questions for Andrew, please let us know. Our first panelist will be Tom Fochman, CEO of Seabass Venture. Tom has more than 40 years of experience working in the green industry. He founded Cocal Landscape in 1992, a Denver-based commercial landscape company. At its peak, Cocal was a $33 million company ranked 41 in the nation and had 560 employees. Under Tom's direction, they opened 3 branch offices, acquired 2 landscape companies, and won more than 29 national and state awards for landscape excellence. In 2011, Tom sold Cocal Landscape and founded Seabass Venture Partners, an investment banking firm. The team at Seabass Venture Partners exists to help business owners in the green industry achieve their financial goals. They are a leader and true resource for business owners in the green industry. They help business owners understand the process of preparing their businesses for sale and get them the maximum dollar for their business. Additionally, Tom has many lifetime achievements, including founding Next Level Network, a nationally renowned industry peer group, a Lawn and Landscape Leadership Award, an ambassador and past president of the NALP Foundation, a 3-term board member of NALP, and recipient of Bob Cannon Lifetime Achievement Award, presented by the Association Landscape Contractors of Colorado. We're happy to have Tom as a panelist. Our second panelist today will be Bruce Wilson, co-founder of Bruce Wilson & Company. Bruce Wilson stands as one of the visionaries in landscape business, with insights and expertise developed over 40 years leading world-class landscape firms. As founder of Bruce Wilson & Company, Bruce has brought together many of the industry's most accomplished business owners, as well as the next generation of energized thought leaders. Bruce served for 3 decades as president of Valley Crest Landscape Maintenance and vice president of its parent corporation, Valley Crest Companies Brightview. Prior to rebranding as Bruce Wilson & Company in 2015, he was co-owner and partner of Wilson Oiler Group. He was also co-owner of the Palm Desert, California-based top 100 commercial landscape services company, Conserve Land Care, since sold to Speber Landscape Companies. Bruce Wilson & Company has been officially facilitating partner for NALP peer groups since 2013. During his career, Bruce has held numerous industry leadership positions, including serving as the board of directors for NALP's foundation and chairing the association's landscape management committee. Bruce holds a degree from Cornell University in ornamental horticultural and is a resident of Scottsdale, Arizona. He is a nationally recognized author, a frequent guest speaker, and a panelist at industry events and a monthly columnist for Lawn and Landscape magazine. I would like to now introduce our first presenter, Tom, with Seabass Venture Partners.
Thank you, Amy. And just double checking again, you can hear me fine?
We can hear you just fine, Tom.
Okay. and hello to Bruce. And hello to everybody else in these challenging and trying times that we are in. I'm going to focus most of my talk on pretty much the big topic of the moment, and that would be the CARES Act, and specifically the Payroll Protection Plan, PPP or Triple P. And I'm actually hoping that all of you that are going to partake have already submitted your application. But if you've not, I want to give you some tips on how to get going on that. The CARES Act is being billed as, a bit of an unprecedented federal stimulus program in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think of it more as an emergency economic program to keep the part of our economy that we have going stabilized as much as it can be at the moment. So there are other pieces of the CARES Act, but the most important one, I think, is the Payroll Protection Plan as it relates to landscape. And I'm only going to speak about it as it relates to the landscape industry. And I also want to let you know that you want to work with your banker or an SBA person on anything I tell you, because one of the frustrating things about this program, and talking to many lenders, and I use a national CPA firm, and in talking to my CPA yesterday, it changes almost hourly. It was kind of a load, fire, aim attempt. So they rolled the program out and then decided to fit rules to it. But most of the changes are more for the lenders than you as the recipients. So money was starting to be dispersed. The earliest I know of is this past Monday. And I actually have a business in Montana. We got our application in the first day and we receive our funds today. So this is basically how it works. It's a 4-page application and 2 pages are instructions. So it's really 2 pages. And I executed ours for our business in Montana, but I didn't actually fill it out. But I was amazed at how simple it was. It covers a period from February 15th to June 30th. So 2.5 months going forward. You have to have less than 500 employees. Your loan is capped at 2.5 times your prior average 12-month payroll costs. Emphasis on costs. So the payroll costs, is salary, wages, vacation, sick time or other leave, even paid severance for an employee, healthcare premiums, retirement benefits, all associated payroll taxes, and payments to sole proprietors and independent contractors. So sole proprietors and independent contractors are capped at $100,000. So this would be, think of it as a subcontractor that you use for whatever in your business, but they're capped at $100,000 when you work your formula. The total cannot exceed $10 million, the total loan to you. So these are loans. And if you use 75% of the money to maintain your existing payroll, which would mean you're maintaining your employee base, the loan becomes a grant and then is forgiven. So I wondered about that a little bit yesterday. Initially, I wondered, why does it need to be a loan and then become a grant? And I believe it is because loan forgiveness is taxable. A grant forgiveness is not. So this is really meant for you to keep your employees working and maintain your payroll. So these are employees that now wouldn't go on unemployment, and they're able to pay their rent and live. And I don't believe there's ever been a program like this. Different thoughts about it, because landscape's essential. Do we truly need it? Well, we may need it. If this goes on longer than anticipated, you're going to have cutbacks with your customers. It might move to 1 employee per truck instead of 5 if you do maintenance. People don't pay you because they don't have tenants in their buildings, things like that. So it's an interesting program. So it's very date driven. First day of submittals was Friday, April 3rd. And there's a rule or a regulation that your lender, so you use a lender for this, call it a bank. And the SBA is providing a guarantee to the bank. And they must fund within 10 days of acceptance. So we were accepted, my business in Montana was accepted actually over the weekend, call it April 4th. Formally noticed Monday the 5th, and we receive our funds today. So Bruce and I were chatting yesterday, and of course Bruce is a industry leader with peer groups, has 70 plus companies, and I think most of his companies that applied have received their funds. The key was they went in probably April 3rd, and Bruce can speak to that. Any comments about that, Bruce? He might be muted. Yep, go ahead.
Most of them got in, right away the first day. Some of them had to make corrections to their applications, which delayed them a day or two. But I would say by Monday, the following Monday, that most of them were in.
And would you agree that it was a pretty simple application process?
It's what I've been told. I didn't apply. Conserve, since we got acquired by Sperber, we're too big in number of employees. We had 450 before being acquired, and now with the other companies we're in with, we're over the limit.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So a number I've heard, and this was a couple days ago, that approximately 200 billion of the 300 billion set aside for the payroll protection program has been allotted, not funded, but spoken for, so to speak. And that changes daily, so it's probably closer to the 300 billion mark today. It's a little bit of conflicting information on independent contractors, but in the reading I've done and in talking to larger contractors that have submitted, you can use them in the formula if they're W-9 paid contractors up to $100,000. Okay. This tweaking that has been going on, as I mentioned, is mostly internal for the lenders. Very frustrating for them. It's all hands on deck with these lenders. People that would never be involved in something like this as employees of a bank are working on these applications, and they're working well into the evening hours. There's a little bit of a, I don't know what the limit is, but you have to get your individual people within the bank that are working on these registered. And I think you can only have so many seats, so to speak. So this $6 billion in asset lender that I spoke to a couple times this week, they started with 2, and they now have 7 people certified, and they've done, as of yesterday, 1,300 applications. A much smaller bank that I work with, they're actually building their bank. Oh, and back to the $6 billion bank, they're not accepting non-customer or client applications. They're too busy with their clients. Another bank I spoke to, much smaller, growing bank, is taking non-clients, and they've submitted, as of yesterday, around 1,000. And they're using it actually to gain customers. They now have a loan with a new customer, and they, of course, hope to achieve more banking with them. It seems to me kind of smaller regional banks have been a little more nimble. The bigger banks, a little slow-footed maybe. Bad program for Wells Fargo. They couldn't accept applications on April 3rd. How is that? They're like 4th or 5th largest bank in the nation. They can't even accept applications. Then they took them on Saturday, of all things, and they had to shut down the process on Sunday because they were at their limit, because they're sanctioned for some of their past indiscretions. So then the federal government removed that, so they're up and running. But you know, it was if you were with Wells on the first few days, you didn't get your application in. So here's some real examples of either clients or friends of mine in the industry, and I'm going to give you the kind of the numbers, the magnitude. There's a $40 million contractor receiving $3.1 million, $20 million contractor 1.7, $12 million contractor 5.5. That contractor happens to be about 60% installation, less employees than a more like a maintenance-driven service company. $9 million contractor, $900,000. What's interesting about this is when I spoke to this company as a client, they told me they didn't qualify. Why don't you qualify? And I actually don't remember what they told me because I think, you know, I just knew they qualified. They're my client. So I said, you qualify. So they looked into it, $900,000. $6 million contractor, $400,000, a $3 million contractor, $207,000. So this is real money. There's other programs available, and I'm not going to talk about much because they're not near the benefit or magnitude of PPP. So there's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. I've heard it can exceed $10,000, but it's a loan. It's not forgiven. There's an Express Bridge Loan pilot program up to $25,000, best I can tell, but again, it's payable. You have to pay it back. There is an SBA debt relief program, but I'm not very well versed on that. So just some of my own thoughts on this. Again, verify what I've said today with your lender. If you don't have a great relationship with a lender and you want to apply, I would go to a smaller bank that's probably less inundated. I'd go to a local bank. I'd start there. If you don't truly need the money and you receive the money, let it get turned into the grant and forgiven, and I'd pay off debt that you have. Or I would invest in my business, capital expenditures in your company. Or simply put, I'd keep it as dry powder for something unforeseen, like a COVID-19 outbreak, some curveball that you get. Do not take it as a windfall distribution to yourself. So I think this act has its flaws. Again, I think it's a little dubious. I have to tell you that most landscape contractors I talk to, I don't think really need this, but they have applied for it. And I would apply for it if I was a contractor today. I would have it and set aside just to see what happens. It was enacted quite quickly, as I said, and it's unprecedented. So it's, there's some kinks to work out. And again, if I got this money and I didn't need it on it, I'd sit on it at a separate account and I'd make sure something didn't change after the fact where all of a sudden it's not forgiven. I'd just keep it on the sidelines. And I think, just looking at my notes, I think that is basically it for me. This is what the federal government and groups like the Small Business Administration do in times of need like this, and that's why we have them, and God bless them. It's in many ways a wonderful program. So again, get with your bank or SBA lender to confirm what we've talked about today. So that is it for me. If you've received any questions, Amy, I'm happy to field them, or
Great.
we can move into Bruce and we can field them later.
We do have several questions, Tom, and thank you for that. One of them that just came through was they thought they only had about 8 weeks to use the loan/grant, and we're only allowed to use it for payroll-related expenses. Is this not correct?
It is correct. I don't really know. You received this money, you don't really need it. You're using your cash flow to fund your payroll over 8 weeks. here sits this money. I don't believe the federal government they don't have a way to monitor that. And I don't know that it would ever come up. Main thing is that you've maintained your payroll. But yes, the way it reads is the amount of money you receive is to be used in 8 weeks. You can actually pay people that are not working if it helps you maintain your payroll. I've heard of prepaying benefits within the 8-week period if you need to. You could prepay a subcontractor if you use that sub as part of your formula. But yes, that is my understanding, 8 weeks.
Okay, thank you so much. We did have another attendee that would like to know, has your hiring process changed during this, and if so, how?
Well, I'm not an employer, so I'd have to actually let Bruce respond to that. I'm just thinking, I haven't heard of hiring processes changing. I will make a comment related to hiring. Visa employees are not part of this formula. So H-2B or any other visa program you might be using does not qualify. Do you have any comments about hiring, Bruce, or different hiring practices?
Well, I haven't heard too many people that were doing hiring other than bringing back their seasonal employees. And I haven't heard about anything different they're doing. I've heard that people are getting a higher quality of employee. And we're in particular looking to upgrade our workforce during this with other companies laying people off.
Good, thank you for that. I was going to make a quick comment. As of today, to the best of my knowledge, Michigan is the only state that has gone against Homeland Security ruling that landscape's essential in every state, and landscape is not essential, and the landscape profession is not at work in Michigan. I know NALP and other organizations are working hard to change that, but as of today, Michigan is shut down.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, we had one or two other questions.
Can I add something?
Yes, please, Bruce.
Within the state of California, several cities now have made landscape or banned landscape workers from working because they were not following social distancing and other things like that. So they banned it for everybody in those communities. So I think it behooves us all as an industry to make sure that our work teams, and if we see work teams of other companies, that we call them out on it and make sure that they behave accordingly so that we all don't get shut down.
That's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Bruce. Tom or Bruce, we have a couple of similar questions coming in regards to eligibility for the loan. If a contractor has employees under them that filed for unemployment, would they still qualify? And also, we have several people asking if they had to actually fire an employee within this window, would they still be able to qualify?
My understanding on that, so if your employees are laid off, they're attached to you, but you're not maintaining your payroll, I think it would be viewed as you have less employees, and I'm not positive on that. And then I think it's the same with fired employees. You have less employees unless you replace the employee. It's all about headcount and what you're spending in payroll. It's based on your prior 12 months average payroll. So if you replace an employee, I think you're fine. If you had 20 employees and 10 were laid off, I think it's viewed as you having 10 employees, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay, thank you. And then, Tom, we did have someone ask about your section where you were talking about the CBA requires banks to fund within 10 days of exception. They were wondering if that meant 10 days after the application was accepted or 10 days after they approve it.
10 days after approval is my understanding.
Okay.
Actually, our business in Montana was approved. We're funding today, which is the 10th day after we were approved. And my partner who handled the process, he made a comment that there were a couple other documents that didn't require my signature as a co-owner, but a couple other documents, and that's floated up. We were originally going to fund, we were told last week, and now it's 3 business days later, which is today.
Okay.
Still on the 10th day.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And then, Tom, one more question coming your way. This came in, the question is, can you receive a disaster loan and a PPP loan, or do you need to choose one relief option or the other?
I think you can do both, but I'm not positive. I'm going to look that up after Bruce starts. I think I might be able to confirm that.
Okay, that's perfect. We'll go ahead and move on. And yes, Tom, if at the end we can come back to you and see if we have any other questions then as well.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Tom. I would now like to go ahead and introduce our next panelist, Bruce Wilson, founder of Bruce Wilson and Company.
Yeah, before I start on that, just want to share one thing that some of our clients have been told about how they account for the use of the money, that they set up separate GL accounts on their general ledger where they use that money to pay those expenses that are covered in case they need to substantiate that at a later time.
Good idea.
Okay, go ahead with the slides. So I put this slide in before I saw the thing that NALP came out with yesterday, which pretty much confirmed what I was saying here, that there's huge differences across the United States in how this virus is affecting businesses. And it's really market by market and varies across the different types of services companies supply. So it affects, I think, construction much more than maintenance. Design build has particularly been hard hit, and that would be almost everywhere. And then I think even within the different types of business that you do, you have different types of customers, and those customers have been hit differently. So you could be in maintenance, for instance, and maintenance has not been very hard hit. However, if most of your customers were in hospitality and resort type customers, you could be hit very hard. We've only been hit hard by one customer, and it's a hospitality customer. And it took our monthly billing with that customer from $24,000 a month down to $6,000 a month. So a pretty big impact. If we had too many of those customers, we would be hurting. But since we have mostly homeowner associations, we haven't been hurt at all in that segment. So the different segments and the different markets, there's lots of differences. So it's not a one size fits all thing. Next slide. So there are some real success differentiators that I've seen in how customers have approached this. I think the biggest differentiator is the customers that actually talk to their clients and talk to them early. And I think it's not ever too late to start talking to your customers, but talk to your customers, find out how they're affected by the virus, what they're worried about, and help them make an educated decision what to do, whether to curtail service, postpone services, or what. But if you give them a guidance on how they make that decision, it's better than letting them do it in a vacuum and just decide, I'm going to cancel, period. So I think, and I think that in terms of what your account managers or salespeople or project managers should be doing, they should be not really trying to sell at this point in time, but be a resource. And by being a resource, they'll be able to sell. And learn where the opportunities are and the pain points, and modify your services to fit those. I think a big problem customers are having is maintaining the culture within their business. You know, it's a big cultural shift to do all this social distancing and people wearing masks and working from home. Well, companies are finding it's very difficult to maintain their business culture. And they've got to start to do things that bring people together. I think Zoom conferences are being used pretty widely in businesses to connect people that are working remotely. And I'll talk a little more about that later, but I think it's really essential that you continue to work on the culture of your company. And as an owner, I mean, this is when you've got to take that time to work on your business. You can't just get caught up in the day-to-day. If you don't maintain your culture, it's going to drift, and that's not going to be good for you in the long run. I think you need to reinvent your business in a way. Many of you do business plans, so you had a business plan for this year. Well, it's probably pretty much out the window, and I think you need to revise your budget so that you know what the true impact of what it's going to be on your business, and that you make decisions based on fact, not on emotion. Reassess your strategies. I think even doing a new SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, do that over again for this current time and see what that suggests for your business. Look at your market positioning, watch what your competitors are doing, and just make new plans for the rest of this year and then possibly next year. I think working on your business, I think, becomes really important for owners. Now you're likely in the trenches trying to just survive, but that's not going to do it. You've got to really have a strategy for survival. It's not just being in a reactionary mode. You've got to get proactive about it. Innovate how your services are created and priced and delivered. It may be necessary to change how you do that. Look for ways that technology can help you and your customers change faster. One of the things that we've done with some of our customers that want to reduce service is we've been expanding the use of plant growth regulators to slow down the growth of plant material while they're on reduced maintenance. And we've been able to charge for that service, and it's going to be a better thing for the customer. So I think there's plenty of ways you can do things. I've heard of, and if you've been on other webcasts, I'm sure you're hearing some of these things, but there's companies that have converted their lawn care crews to doing disinfecting for companies, because more companies are interested in disinfecting things. Grocery stores are disinfecting entrances to their store and things like that. So there's ways to make use of service people that you already have. Next. So the big challenge is teamwork and morale. I think one thing you have to do, I notice a lot of owners really worrying that the people that are working remotely aren't working, and essentially they don't trust their employees, which I think is bad. But I think if you learn how to measure that performance and the effectiveness of people working from home, have measurables so that you don't have that distrust build. Involve your team in planning. Your team knows how their other teammates feel about things. There's employees that are worried for their own safety. there's employees that are just worried about keeping their jobs and keeping food on the table for their family. They're worried about job security, and they may not be careful about not coming to work if they don't feel well and infect the other people in your company. We had an employee this past week that came into the office when he was not feeling well, didn't tell anybody, and then on Saturday called and told us he was infected with COVID. And he had met with 4 members of our senior management team, and now they're all in self-quarantine. So, I mean, if your people are afraid to tell you when they don't feel well, that's a bad thing. Involve your team in understanding how important it is for everybody to be watching out for each other. And I think create virtual opportunities for your people to meet, and not just to meet and talk business, but a lot of companies had really good team morale because people met in the lunchroom and ate lunch together and talked about families and other interests. You can do those same kind of things remotely. Maybe have once a week remote office lunch, or once a week. I've heard of companies doing after work happy hours on Zoom type conferences. These things could be the things that keep your people together. I know in our company, we have a lot of people that go to the same church, and because of that, they're friends outside of the office. Well, these friendships have been separated now, and people feel a need to continue to stay connected. So these Zoom kind of meetings are great for that kind of thing, and helps, I think would help tremendously with morale if you tried it. Next. There's going to be opportunities with every kind of disruption we have in the market, and there always have been. I think there's some opportunities there to upgrade your team. You know, there's going to be talent available. The recruiters that I've heard talk are saying there's more people available now. In fact, my golf partner is a life coach, and he says he's got been inundated with people now needing to find new opportunities. And you know, for the last year or so, there have been very few people looking for jobs because they all had jobs, and now there's a lot. And I would look outside the industry too. You know, there's, for instance, we don't hire, when we look for a new account manager, we never hire somebody from the industry. We always hire people from customer service type positions, because that's what we think is important. So hiring outside the industry, there's going to be a lot of talent available. And if your companies are not particularly tech savvy, it'd probably be a good time to pick somebody up with tech experience. Look at your business model. Is it the right business model going ahead? You know, do you need people in your office? Do you need as much office space? We're maxed out, and I'm thinking now that we've shown that we can work remotely, we don't need the office space that we have now. We can grow. I don't know where we'll put our trucks, but maybe we can park them in the office. But you know, I think that we can make our facility last a lot longer by using remote work things. But I think there'll be new opportunities that come up in different services, and I think now's the time to become. You know, Disney has a term for the people that work on their amusement things. People are called Imagineers, and I think we need Imagineers in our business to Imagineer what our business could look like 10 years from now. You hear people like Mark Cuban talking, and they're saying, you know, 10 years from now, there'll be hundreds of new businesses that don't exist today. So I think that's true. So where are the opportunities to improve and innovate? Innovation is big. customers' behaviors are likely to change. And what direction is that going to take? And I think that's where it's really important now for you to continually talk to your customers and find out what they're thinking. You know, how do they imagine their business is going to look in 4 or 5 years? You know, let's think about skating to where the puck is going, not where it is now. Don't skate back to the puck. Next slide. I think there'll be expansion opportunities. I think acquisitions are going to come available. Some companies are not going to want to continue after they've gone through this shock, and I'm thinking of particularly smaller companies. During the previous recessions, some of the like maintenance companies that are between $500,000 and $1.5 million, those companies are basically owner-operators with high-risk jobs. And when they get shaken up by something like this, where they see their whole life and career going down the tubes, they may want to abandon their company and just sell it and come to work for a company where they have job security. They may get pressure from their spouse to do that. So those are the kind of things that are going to be available out there if you're ready and willing. I think marketing is really important to continue. I remember from the Great Recession, I had one client in particular that stopped marketing, and they were a really good company. They were the market leader, and their competitors marketed against them by saying they're expensive. So their whole market message became what the other contractors were saying about them, and it really set them back severely. And they had to overcome the fact that all they were was expensive. So marketing is really important to keep doing it, using social media and public relations to drive videos, photography, et cetera. There's a few companies that are doing just a great job with that. Pacific Landscape Management is pretty visible on social media, and they're doing really significant things to improve how their company is viewed in the community, how it's viewed in the industry, and they're making tremendous headway. Some of you may have seen the video that they posted with the rake, the person swinging the rake around to show what social distancing was. That video has gotten more reposts of, I don't know how you measure that stuff, but you know, they're really marketing their company well through this. And it's going to help them. They've been a very successful company all along, and I think they're doing a great job. And then winners will emerge. Winners always emerge out of these things. There's in every market, there's some new company will pop up and become a significant player during these kind of events. Okay, I think that was the last slide for me.
Oh.
Oh no, okay, one more.
You good?
Cost cutting. You know, I really hate that term, and I thought I took it out of the slide, but it ended up getting back in there somehow. You know, right now, I think for all we know, this downturn could last 2 months, 3 months, probably not going to last 6 months. So how much cost cutting do you really want to do? And secondly, if you're getting these PPP loans, you're getting financing for not cost cutting. So I think it's kind of silly to make job cuts unless you're cutting people that just aren't any good or are sacred cows. It's a good time to do that and upgrade your workforce, but don't just make cuts arbitrarily because sales are going down. You know, that this PPP thing is to help you for the short-term loss of sales. So don't compound the problem by making unnecessary cuts. And for those during that were companies during the Great Recession, as soon as you make that first cut, it's a morale killer in your company, because everybody then goes, okay, who's next? And everybody's walking around on pins and needles thinking that they're going to be next. And it becomes a real negative in your company. So I would really be very careful what you do relative to cost cutting. But you can be smart cost saving. Don't spend stuff that you don't need to spend. If you have capital purchases and you're not sure if it's going to come back or you're going to need that stuff, postpone it. Don't cancel it. Postpone it. See if you can wait 6 weeks to decide if you need that new truck. I think you can reduce overhead without hurting your business if you've let it get too high. I know during the run up to the Great Recession, a lot of companies let their overhead get too high, and they had to cut it and swore they'd never do it again. And now that the economy's been good for so many years, people have started to let their overhead creep up too much. So I think making those kind of adjustments are fine, but I wouldn't brand it as cost cutting. I think that's really a negative thing to be doing in your company. Now's a good time to recruit. There's going to be people out there, as I said before, and then build trust in your company, pull your people together, set fresh objectives, communicate. You hear over and over again people talking about the need to tell millennials and other people why you're doing things. If you make adjustments to your strategy, tell your employees why. They have to know why you're doing things. If they know why, they'll get behind it and help support it. Okay, that's the last slide.
Well, thank you, Bruce. We do have questions that have come in for you, and if one is more applicable for Tom, if you wouldn't mind joining in as well. One of the questions is, how can companies plan ahead and bulletproof their businesses for crisis such as this?
Well, I think I told you some of those things. You've got to, I think one of the things that's a good practice is go through your customer list. I don't know what kind of business you're in, whether it's design, build, or maintenance, but in maintenance, this works particularly well. Go through customer by customer and identify whether they're high risk or low risk in terms of having to adjust for what's going on. If you think they're high risk to cut back, you need to treat them one way. If you don't think they're at risk at all, you can treat them another way. And then also you can tell how much of your business is at risk from a factual basis rather than just worrying about it. I think you try to reduce whatever you can to fact-based decision making so that you're not just worrying about stuff when you don't know how much you need to even worry about it. And then I think, be visionary. Try to see what it's going to look like 6 months from now. If it comes back 100%, what do you need to look like? If it only comes back 75%, what do you need to look like? And if it comes back 50%, what do you need to look like? Those are the kind of things that can give you the comfort and take a lot of the stress out of your life if you know that you're prepared for whatever it is that could come at you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have another person asking, would you suggest that you designate one person to call on all your regular clients and check in?
I don't know how many clients you have, but like in our case, we have about 110 different customers for our maintenance business, and we have 4 account managers and our director of maintenance, and they just divided the list up and said who's going to call who and who's got the best working relationship with them. So I don't know if you're a small company, it might be one person, but I think for the customer to hear from the owner is powerful. If you have good customers, every company I've talked to where the owners picked up the phone, they've received nothing but thanks for showing an interest in their customers and that they care. They didn't even have to do anything other than just call and say, hey, how's your business doing? How's things working for you? What are you worried about? what can we do to help, that sort of thing. Make sure whoever the person you designate, if you just designate one, has got really good skills and can actually make decisions while they're on the phone.
Great advice. Thank you. The next question is coming from a contractor's employees wondering if that the recover rebates, are they being treated as advanced refunds of a 2020 tax credit?
Say that again, Amy.
Sure. So are the recovery rebates that are being distributed being treated as advanced refunds of a 2020 tax credit? They go on to ask, as they understand it, taxpayers will reduce the amount of the credit available on their 2020 tax return by the amount of the advanced refund payment they are receiving. Why is this not being treated as a taxable income versus an advance on your 2020 tax refund?
Well, the term that threw me was rebate, and I think the person is talking about the payroll protection plan. That's really a question for your CPA. I'm not really qualified to answer that, honestly. Do you have any comments on that, Bruce?
Yeah, I was just thinking, is that referring to the $1,200 that it was supposed to show up in everybody's bank account?
From reading into this, I believe it is. I believe that's what they're referring to. And
so I'll just say I have not heard anything about that being taxable. That is just a government handout, I think. And although I'm not qualified to answer that, that sounds like a fake news kind of thing that some rumor that somebody started. Because I haven't heard that.
Okay, thank you. And they did say it was indeed about the $1,200. So thank you for clarifying that for everybody. We have another question with this attendee asking, because last year was a big year for snow, our full-time equivalent number of employees is larger than what we use during the normal landscape season. Are they looking at the total dollar amount spent on payroll, or if our employee count is down because we do not use as many people in landscaping? Will that hurt our chances of getting the amount forgiven?
As I was reading while Bruce was talking, your lender has the ability to adjust your payroll formula for seasonality. If you had a big snow year, you would have bigger payroll, and that would actually help you with this program, I would think. But there is a little bit of flexibility in the program. But more than what I mentioned, one thing I read was you can exceed 500 employees if you still fit within what the Small Business Administration considers a small business. And one thing I read about that was up to a $15 million net worth of the business. So one thing for everybody to understand is go to the SBA website. There's quite a bit of information there, and there's really good question and answer things on the website. You can learn quite a bit on there, and talk to your lender, of course.
Good advice.
I'm not expert on this either, but I'm just thinking that if you use the snow employees and their wages to create the amount that you want to borrow, they're probably that's going to affect how much can be forgiven if you don't spend the same amount again. So it would make an argument for having to carve out those people that are seasonal in that regard, so that what you do borrow becomes forgivable.
Yeah, I'd model it out a couple different ways, I think.
I agree with that, Tom. I'm not an expert either, and I think go to SBA and get
Okay, good advice. And as we continue the discussions, NALP does have a resource page that might have some helpful links on our website under our coronavirus resource section. We do have questions, though, coming your way. If that's okay with time, we'll take a couple more. One is, how do you recommend handling employees who are not able to come to work due to having a spouse or family member who has underlying issues? Do you allow them to collect unemployment?
You know, I think that's a state-by-state thing. In California, they're allowed to claim family leave on that. And there's been additional money put into that family leave program, and I think they can take 2 months or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that's covered in the California family leave thing. I don't know about other states.
And we do. I will let everybody listening also remind you that we do have a state-by-state page on our website under the coronavirus resources, and we do update it daily. So check back often because we do update that.
Can I add one thing on that? You know, one thing that we were concerned, we thought we had a lot more people that were going to have that issue, and because of the family leave law. Even though I live in Scottsdale, I conserve my businesses in California. That's why I know this. We were thinking that we could get we have a lot of husband and wife that both work for us. And we were thinking we could let one of them work the morning shift and one of them work the afternoon shift and be off the other half, so that we would still have the number of employees we need to get our work done.
That's a great suggestion. I'm sure a lot of other people come in with that situation. Thank you. In feeding off that, we've gotten several questions just in general with sick leave policies, especially having sick leave policies and finding out people are abusing it. Do you have any suggestions with that?
I don't know if I have any suggestions with it, but I think, you know, it's important that you do what's right for the employee and you maintain trust. I think if you try to take something away from them that they think is entitled or discourage them from using something they think they're entitled to, it's a real trust buster. So I think, you know, having a conversation with them, telling them, you know, that you want them to do what's right for their family, and then keep in mind that we need to do what's right for the business too. You know, try to help them make a decision that's good for them and good for the company.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. We're near the end now. Before we end the webinar, though, I would like to give both Tom and Bruce the opportunity, if you just have any closing remarks that you would like to share with everybody. And
well,
Tom,
my remark would be, if you intend to use any of the SBA programs, get on it. The Wall Street Journal, while we're talking, sent out a little alert and said that the Small Business Administration programs run out of money today. There's been 1.3 million applications. They aren't all payroll protection, that doesn't say, but I said 200 billion of the 300. This says 289 billion of the 350 billion, but they anticipate it to be exhausted today. So now there's negotiating, of course, doing another level of funding. But just get your application in if you intend to use the SBA. And then in listening to Bruce, just little notes I took, you know, upgrade your people. This is the time to do that. This whole remote working thing is going to be with us forever going forward. That reduces overhead. You know, this helps you, and you can be more competitive. Maybe acquire somebody. But what he said all through it, without really saying, is don't get complacent. This is the time to innovate. And as Bruce said, people win in times like this, so be a winner. Don't sit back and bitch about the virus and how it's affecting your business. Figure out how to turn things into positives in your business with your employees and up your level of innovation. He also said towards the end, model out a worst case scenario. What if it goes 2 or 3 more months? What's that look like? Be a planner. This is a time to innovate and plan.
Thank you, Tom.
Good summary, Tom. The other thing I'd ask or recommend is that you focus on your relationships with your customers and your employees, and focus on building trust. You know, trust is going to win the day. If your customers trust you and they see you as a trusted advisor that helps them with their business or their home or whatever it is, they just need to know that they're dealing with people they can trust. And that's the same thing that's really important for your employees. You don't want to lose your employees' trust that all you care about is money and you don't care about them. They need to know you care as much about them as you care about the company, and the company is what's going to be needed to stay together to help everybody's family. So focus on building trust.
Thank you both. Great words of wisdom, and I just want to thank you again, Bruce and Tom, for presenting today, the time you took to share your strategies and ask questions. I want to remind everybody, if you do have a question after this webinar for Bruce and Tom, please share it with us. I will make sure that they get it, and you will get an answer. We will also do our best to post questions and answers on our website later this week from this webinar. We invite everyone to visit the NALP Coronavirus webpage, which can be found at our website, landscapeprofessionals.org. You can see future viewings of webinars in this series. You will be able to see the recording from today's webinar and a lot of helpful information. Thank you again for everybody listening. I hope everyone stays safe and enjoys the rest of their day.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you all.